welcome to part 2 of our 3-part video series called the ABCs of Knitting. In part 1 we covered the basic knit stitch, how to cast on using the lace or knitted cast on, how to do the knit stitch, and how to cast off. In this video we're going to be covering the purl stitch. If you know how to knit and you know how to purl, you know the basics of knitting. Everything else is just a tweak or a variation on those two stitches. So what do you say we get started? So let's first of all do a quick recap on the knit stitch. With your yarn to the back of your knitting, you're going to take your right hand needle, go from the bottom of the first stitch on your left hand needle, bottom up and in behind the needle on your left hand, wrap your needle and bring your right hand needle down and underneath the stitch on your left hand needle and slide your new stitch off. So from the bottom up, the yarn is behind your knitting, wrap your needle and slide it off. Up from the bottom up, behind the needle on your left, wrap it, slide it down and underneath and off. So that is your knit stitch. The purl stitch is pretty much the opposite of the knit stitch. So instead of having the yarn to the back of your knitting, your yarn is to the front of your knitting. Instead of going from the bottom of the stitch on your left hand needle up and behind, you are going with your right hand needle from the top of the stitch down. You see that? Top of the stitch right down. You wrap that yarn around and bring it down and up, and there's your new purl stitch. So let's do that again. With your right hand needle, you go into the top of the stitch on your left hand needle and in front of your left hand needle instead of behind as you would with a knit stitch. So you're in front. Your yarn is also in front for your purl, so you wrap the needle down and up and take it off your needle. So once again, the right hand needle goes into the first stitch on your left hand needle from the top down and in the front. You wrap your needle and bring it off, slide it off your needle. Down and in front, crisscross, wrap it, slide it off. So down, in front, you've still got that crisscross that you did with the knit stitch, but in this case your right hand needle is at the front of your left hand needle. Now you take that yarn, wrap it around, and then slide it down and bring your new stitch off the needle. So when you knit a row and then you purl the next row, you end up with what is called a stockinette stitch. So you can see the difference in the texture here. There's your knitted side and it looks like little V's. The purl side looks like little bumps. And the stockinette stitch is used in a variety of different clothing pieces. It's often used for the body of a sweater, for mittens, for the main part of a hat. It's used in all sorts of different things. You use the basic stockinette stitch if you're going to knit intarsia, which is picture knitting, or if you're going to knit Fair Isle, which is color work, or even if you're going to do cables, it's going to be a combination of stockinette stitch and twisted stitches. So that is lesson number 2, your purl stitch. Before moving on to video 3, do take some time to practice your knit and purl stitches. Knit one row and purl the next, and that will create the stockinette stitch. In video 3, we'll be covering how to combine the knit and the purl stitches to create all sorts of different textures. See you then.